Hey everyone, and welcome to this broadcast. Mark and Melissa DeJesus here in the house, bringing you conversations for your healing and freedom journey. Today we're going to get into people pleasing, and we pray that in our discussion you're going to hear a bit of our journey, what it's been like to process that stuff out, and we pray that by what we share, it'll help your life and your journey. So enjoy.
Okay, so we like to do little reaction videos now, I feel like, with the topics that you've been laying out. So you did some other great videos recently on people pleasing. And I love talking about this because I feel like this is my ish. This is my struggle. And I think it's been my struggle because I've had to battle, which you did touch on this on your videos. I've had so much rejection to work through in my life. I'm still in the process of it. So when I bump up against this, which I feel like is something I have to intentionally work on when I interact with people, because I still feel that pull to people please or to feel okay, and there's all sort of things underneath it. So I thought it would be really good to do another video, a reaction video on people pleasing, because you and I have had a lot of problems with this.
Yeah, well, because it's so tied into our history. It's so tied into our reference of love, our reference for how we feel safe. And I think that where this discussion can be helpful, I'm teaching it, right, and laying it out. But this is kind of this is the real world of our application of it,
right.
of what it's looked
right.
like. Because it's not I'm free from people pleasing. It's a lot of layers.
I wish I could say that.
I wish I could too. It's a lot of layers that you have to navigate through and what it means to break free from it, because all people please, it ties into performance, we're performance oriented, what we do. It's so difficult to work through because it goes to your childhood and whether you were loved or equipped and how you felt growing up.
Right.
And because part of the pleasing, a big part of it is, am I okay? Am I safe? Am I loved? Do I belong? Am I a part of things? And then we enter into a relationship with God and we transfer all those broken approaches to Him. Am I okay with you, God? Am I loved? Am I safe? Right? And depending on how you're taught spiritually, you could pack on more people-pleasing baggage.
Oh my gosh, big time. Even through my whole journey, in so much of the self-beating that I did, this would come up constantly. And you and I have talked about this a lot, because in interacting with people, I would leave them and go, what is wrong with me? Why are you doing that? Why are you over-talking? Why are you trying to be funny? Why are you doing all these things? And it just was this, if I could take a bat and just beat myself with it and say, Missy, stop doing that. I feel like, in a way, maybe it would have helped me, not helped me to hurt myself, but just stop. Maybe if I hit myself, I'll stop. Obviously, It didn't, because it's something that I learned to do.
It brings out the self-battle that I've been talking about too, because there's this need to please, and you exert effort into it, and it's never good enough. So then it goes back to beating yourself up, and the cycle continues.
Right.
It's kind of I heard. Remember Jim Gaffigan when he made that joke about? He made a joke about two different friends that didn't know each other, and they were going to meet. And he told one set of friends, "Hey, by the way, they think I'm English. I'm British."
Right? Right. Don't be alarmed if I have an accent when we meet them. Right.
So it shows we wear these hats in different settings.
Right.
We're just trying to make people happy to feel loved. And I think I realized for me, this thing was all throughout life. And I felt in the early stages, I could feel a sense of belonging by being funny. Yeah. So I would make jokes and I would do impressions. So I'd come home.
You're good at it, though. You are really good at them.
So I'd come home and I'd do impressions of my teacher, and my parents would laugh. And it creates this loop of ooh, look at that. And I think when it comes to people pleasing, everybody has the line that gets fed to them growing up. Do this and you'll get love. So it's like being funny, being studious, being great, good in your grades, being responsible, being the well-behaved, the one who doesn't give any trouble, the whatever it is. And then it goes into even like where people become rebellious or whatever. Whatever gets attention is going to be the thing that gets fed.
Right.
So people pleasing is like whatever you're doing to try to make an effort to feel safe, feel loved. So for me, looking back, I never felt, everything I felt was like nothing is good enough.
Right.
And so it fed a bad monster in me because I lived a lot of my life just trying to get a little bit of that feedback, a little bit of that like, hey, you're good, you're great. And it sucks us in, then we're trapped, then it's wearing us out. We're like, I need to get out of this. And I didn't know how to get out of it. Because if you didn't like me, that was going to bug me.
Right.
It was going to bug me a lot.
Right.
And like I've said in the broadcast, we have to get past this thing in Christianity where we like braggadociously like, I don't care what people think. It's like no one's exempt from this.
Right.
Everybody has where stuff plays on you. Everybody has where they're doing things more out of pleasing than truly loving people.
I think everybody does it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I feel like when I look back, that was a theme, that sense of like, nothing's good enough.
So for you, though, do you feel like, because as you're talking, I'm thinking, for me, a huge thing was what I would see on people's faces.
Yeah.
So I don't know, for you, was it like you needed words for people to say to you, like, oh, you're funny or good job or things like that? For me, and to this day, sometimes that's where I do have a hard time, like people's faces, whether I feel like their eyes or whatever are connecting to me. And I think it's just because, honestly, my parents ignored me. Like, they just straight up ignored me.
Yeah. Yeah. Emotional neglect.
Like,
right.
anybody who looks at me, which is where I got in trouble early on with getting male attention. As soon as someone looked at me, it was like instant, oh, somebody looked at me.
Right.
Oh, okay, they looked at me. Like, that need to have just the look. That's why we talk so much about what a man's role is in the home, and looking at your children, looking at your wife, talking to, like, look at them when you talk to them. Because that alone in and of itself is connection and approval, and you're loved, you're safe. I don't even know that I needed people, like, my rejection was so bad and I was so desperate. Just the mere fact of someone listening when I talked.
Right. Same
was
here.
like a drug that I needed to fulfill.
Yeah. Because we're born with an empty tank.
Right.
And if that tank doesn't, it's the best way I could illustrate it, you're born with an empty tank. If it's not filled, holes end up forming in the tank.
Right.
So even if people later in life start loving you, it's an empty tank. It goes out the holes in the bottom.
Right.
So whatever they give can't satisfy because it wasn't set. Like when we were kids, you're designed to be loved by mom and dad in such a way that it sets the compass or the gauge, the calibration.
Yep.
Right? And I know we talk a lot about the parent's role, and even if you are loving, there's still issues people are gonna have, right? You know what I'm saying? We all have to navigate through life. Life is tough. People are mean, etc. But there is a initial calibration meant to happen in childhood to set the like, no, you're loved as you are. You're received. You belong, right? And so when that's not filled, you somehow we develop holes in the bucket. Imagine pouring water into a bucket with holes in the bottom. It's very exhausting.
Right.
So then we see this in relationships where we're all just so needy and we're trying so hard out of our, like you said, our rejection issues.
Right.
But I relate to what you're saying because whereas you say in the attention of men, you asked me the eyes, looking at the eyes.
Right.
I think about in the Bible where God says to Jeremiah, do not be afraid of their faces.
Right.
It's an interesting statement.
Right. It is.
Right?
Yeah.
Like sometimes we don't take time to think about what the Bible's saying. Don't be afraid of their faces. And I feel I relate to that. You said face. Yes, I became, and still to this day, I can become a micro analyzer of nuance of facial expressions.
Yes.
And pick up on the slightest feeling of dismissal that like, you're not engaged with me right now. You're out, right? And it just triggers that
Right.
rejection because it's neediness. Like, I need you
Right.
to pay attention because that means I'm loved. That means I'm okay. That means I'm safe.
Right.
So but then it doesn't produce a healthy relationship.
So what is like so I know you kind of gave a generality, right, of your childhood and being funny. Like, do you have like marker stories of where you're like, wow, this flared really bad? Or is it kind of just, do you feel like it's just been a pattern for you?
I remember when I was a junior in high school, I was in a Christian school, and they had this demerit system. And if you don't know,
That's what you've done.
if you don't know what demerits are, it's
Those of us that went to public school didn't have that.
yeah, it was like I remember when I first went there, they're like, yeah, you're going to get a demerit. I'm like, what's that? Is it like a ticket? Like, like a ticket, like a parking ticket, speeding ticket. So if you get 50 demerits, there's like 30, you'd get like a in-school suspension. By the time you got to 40, it'd be an out-of-school suspension.
And you could get a demerit if your hair wasn't cut properly, right?
Yes, they let it slide because the first day
High
I
and
came into the
tight.
school, I thought I cut my hair short enough, and it was just over my ears, and they were like, "You gotta cut your hair." So if I came back again with it not cut, demerit, I could have.
Oh, okay.
They could have eventually been like, "You're out of here."
Yeah.
But they're like 50, you're done.
Right.
So 50 is like you're kicked out of the school.
Yeah.
Bye bye. And I think in my junior year of high school, I had like 48 or 49.
Which is very unlike you.
It's interesting, right? And I realized, so that summer, I said to myself, you know what? I'm going to straighten up. And I'm going to start acting right. And
But really, what was can we be real here, what the acting wrong actually was? Because, you weren't a bad kid. That's what I'm saying. Going to a fundamental Baptist school, any slight variation of the rules could get a demerit, basically, right?
Right.
Like,
right.
you were not a bad kid.
Okay, so what you're saying, you weren't a
Right.
bad kid. It doesn't register in my memory of feeling that.
Okay, got you.
So that shows the absence of you're a good son, you're good.
Right.
Okay,
that's true.
go ahead. Let me pause that story for a second. Let me go to my driver's ed training, okay? So I have a memory of my driver's ed teacher. I don't have much memory of the experience. I remember one time where these chevron signs, they're called, they're these arrows, and I didn't take the turn sharp enough. I didn't realize how sharp it was, and he had to engage his brake. That's the only memory I have. But there's a second memory besides that. Towards the end, he said to my mother, he is one of the finest students I've ever had.
Yep.
Bing.
Oh.
Sticks out in my mind. And I hadn't had that affirmation.
Right.
I think, and I've said this before, I think my parents were of the mindset, if you praise your kids too much, they're going to get a big head.
Yes.
And I already had a big head physically, so they were worried I was going to get a big head emotionally.
Right.
So there was a lot of withholding.
Love and affection. Right. We're not going to tell you did a good job.
We don't want to get your head too big. Which,
right.
Yeah,
so crazy.
It's a real distortion. So there's an emptiness of that, and then I felt like a lot of stuff was never good enough. So so going back to the demerits. So I get this sense it's not all bad. I was just like, I can be an example. I'm a senior now. I need to be an example to other kids. But that performance and perfectionism took the reins of it. I remember giving a speech at the next year. We had this, before school started, you'd have this little orientation camp where it was great. It was a great way to start off the school year. We'd go away on a retreat. Amazing, right? It's great. And I remember at the campfire, I was like, this year that I'm really going to serve God, right?
Yep.
Between Pentecostal fundamentalism and Baptist fundamentalism, they found ways to shake hands and go, we're gonna really meet together in these areas. And I got 0 demerits that year. And I remember my mom at the graduation, she's like, when they gave the award as a part of it, they give a no demerit award. She really emphasized that. And I can get it in one
Did she
sense.
say that was her? Is that when she said that?
She's
was
like,
it?
this is my trophy.
Right,
Yeah,
right,
yeah,
right,
yeah.
right. Mm-hmm.
And I get it in the sense of like, we want our kids to behave,
Totally.
right? But there was a empty void where, looking back in my childhood, I didn't have that connectivity emotionally that I'm loved and safe. Right. So I realized I looked for ways to try to find like connection and rapport. Mm-hmm. I'll give you another example. My dad's Puerto Rican. If you don't know that watching, he's Puerto Rican. He barely has a 5th, 6th grade education. Right. He has a thick accent. Mm-hmm. And so growing up, I'm this kid who's like emotional. I feel things. I'm creative.
They don't know
right?
what to do with you.
And my my parents are like, it's just not their wavelength. Yeah. They're like, we don't know, all this emotional stuff that you feel. It was a struggle for me to find ways to connect to my dad because that emotional connectivity and those kind of things. So you're looking, and as a kid, I realized he's like obsessed with the connecting culture. To anything Puerto Rican.
Anything,
right?
Yeah.
He'd go, Mark, Dad, he's from the island,
right?
From the island, right?
Anybody Spanish.
So if we were watching sports, he's like, oh, he's from Cuamo, from Puerto Rico,
right?
Dad, he's from San Juan, right? So I remember that I collected baseball cards, and basketball cards and football cards, and I remember that like I would see a player who was from Puerto Rico, and I would take it out of the pile and go, Dad, look where he's from.
Right. And he would like that. And
it would get his attention.
Right.
Right? That's my example. So one of the players, his name was Juan Gonzalez. He played for the Texas Rangers. He was a big home run hitter. And I started to like and follow Juan Gonzalez. Now, he's a great player, but the start of it was he's from the same area of Puerto Rico my dad's from. And that created an area of talking.
Right.
When really, the parent should be looking to the kid and what interests them.
Right.
And creating that's how we break the curse, by the way, folks.
Correct. Right.
As a parent looks, instead of the kid looking to you and what you're interested in. And now I see our kids do that. Yeah. Hey, Dad,
right.
They like jokes that I like or things
like
I
Max finds out you like a blue whale and he's drawing pictures of the blue whales. Right. Mm-hmm.
Correct. It's not that that's bad, but it's a parent's role to look and see what they notice.
They can connect to their kids about and on, right? Yeah.
So with with both my parents, it was a heavy emphasis on doing things right. Serving God right, having your life right. When you get saved, your life is right, which bleeds into just right, never enough, right? Yeah. So I became a pastor at a very young age, and I remember, you talk about faces, and excuse me for this long tangent.
No, that's good,
but this face thing, it's like I could pick up there could be a room of 500 people, and I'm either singing or preaching, and I'm focused on that one person who's just like this.
Right.
Now, they could have been like,
having a bad morning.
They were in a fight in the car ride. Their dog just died.
Right.
They're struggling. Most people, they're just struggling. And I would take it as
something's wrong with what you're doing. Yeah.
They're not liking what I'm doing, and I could feel myself adjusting. This is kind of embarrassing sharing this part, but I'll share it. I'll share it anyways. There was a tension in my home because I was still living with my parents, and I was a worship leader at the time. And you're doing more contemporary songs, right? We're moving away from the hymns,
right,
and into choruses, a lot of people would call it, right? Now we're in another phase of it, like, of songs that people, sing, right? But it was like we were moving from hymns with lots of words to choruses that were more simple. I exalt thee, and you sing it over and over again.
Sing it 800 times,
right?
Yep.
For example, Shout to the Lord, which came out in the 90s, was considered a long song, right? As far as the choruses, my Jesus, my Savior. There's a whole path to that song, right? But a lot of them were like one page. You could fit on the overhead projector.
Yep.
Remember the overhead
I
projectors?
love the overhead projectors.
Put the film down and it goes up, and you had a person that was their job to man that, right? And so I could feel like the disapproval, my parents not really digging the newer songs.
Right.
So I'm the worship leader, they're attending, and I can see them in the back.
They're not having it.
They sat, my dad ushered in a back section, so in the back. And I'm feeling like disapproval. And I'll never forget one Sunday, I decided to feed that. And I opened up with some old school hymns, and I spiced them up a bit.
Nice.
Well, we had a family lunch that day, and I hear my mom walk in and goes, "That's how you do music."
Oh.
So it's like,
right.
oh, yay. You know,
Yes.
like even then it's like,
Yeah.
I fed something, I did it out of, I wasn't,
Yeah. Yep.
you get, right?
Yep.
So this follows in every area of ministry in my life. This sense of like disapproval
Right.
drives people pleasing. Like somebody that like sense of like disapproving of your life, of you, and
That you're being you is not good enough.
and then when you make mistakes. So I have a lot of memories of
I
moments
need
of just
a
feeling
blanket and a pillow.
feeling that disapproval.
Right.
Can I tell another story?
Oh, please.
So fast forward, I'm now overseeing all church services. We have 5 to 6 services a weekend.
Yeah.
We had Wednesday night. I'm in charge of all this. I'm constantly exhausted,
Yeah.
but I'm in my 20s, so I can I can get by. And I don't. This moment sticks out because it plays into the people pleasing and disapproval. We had a certain order of the service that was set in place, and they had to switch it around. And there are times where doing so many services, it becomes like a blur.
Right.
You're moving from one thing to the next. I'm so glad I don't have to do anything like that nowadays because it takes a toll on the mind. Mm-hmm. And I remember we had to move around the offering and thing, and I had to go up and say some things, take up the offering, move into the next thing. I got up, didn't take up the offering because the offering was like an official, and it's an official like moment. The ushers come up. Those of you that you know what I'm talking about, they pass it around, right? And I forgot, and I walked off in the band. And so after the song, the pastor was supposed to come up and give a sermon.
Yeah.
So I walk off the stage, I walk into the hallway, and I go, oh. As I realize I'm in the back hallway, the senior pastor comes up. He's about ready to go in. He's not aware of what just happened. And I look at him, and I go, I am so sorry. I forgot to take the offering. And he does this. It's not a knock on him, but it's just what happened. It went to my childhood nerve. Yeah. He goes, "Oh, Mark," like that.
Right, like a disappointed parent would.
Yeah,
right.
And it just went to the bottom of my shoe.
Right. Instead of him going, you know what? Don't worry, I'll go take it now.
Which is what he had to do. He went up. He said, we're going to pass the offering. I have a few things I'm going to share while the ushers are passing. And he gave the sermon. And it was fine.
Right.
And I think that that's where performance-driven church world is a feeder for people pleasing.
Yeah, totally. Mm-hmm.
And then it feeds that loop where you touch that disappointment. People don't like you. So I could give a talk in a room, and I know the 5 people that weren't feeling it.
Right.
And there's 100 people there, 95 of them like it. I pick up on that, right? It wasn't really until I explored this rejection route that I realized, okay, I can start healing from this. Mm-hmm. And then it wasn't until I started to really practice a more loving relationship with myself.
Right.
That was like, okay, there's people that are not going to like me.
Yeah.
Accepting that. My obsessive compulsive world couldn't accept that.
Right.
I couldn't accept, because I'm like, how could somebody not like me? I'm a nice guy.
Right.
So, yeah, it's taken me on quite the journey.
Well, I would say, I could give so many stories, but I think, too, when I look back at my journey, because of how much I could not stand myself, I was attracted to people that I would have to cater to. Like, I had friends in my life that I constantly had to people please.
Right.
Like, I have a vivid memory of someone I was friends with for very long, and we were having a struggle in our friendship, and I would constantly beg to fix the friendship.
Yeah.
Constantly. Can we talk? Can we get together? Can we talk? Can we talk? And I have a vivid memory of one day we're talking and we get together and it's so awkward. So I'm over talking because she's just sitting there and trying to make it all okay. What do we have to do? And I love you, and what can we do? And why are we not getting along? And what's happening? And all this petty stuff comes out. And she sat there and she said to me, I don't even know why I'm doing this. I don't even want to be here. And instead of having even respect for myself too, and saying, you know what, you're right. I keep trying to make this work and please you. Like, I'm not going to make you love me too. Like, I ended up always finding these people that I had to constantly feed. And like, I don't know if a lot of you can relate to that, but I feel like when you have this monster inside of you too, that's like wanting someone to like you, you end up sometimes being attracted to the very thing that isn't needed to help heal the situation until you, which I want to go into next, is really understanding what love is and what real healthy love looks like in relationships.
It drove you to try so hard and then be attracted towards people that it would never be good enough, and you have to keep working harder. Convincing
to please somebody to love me.
Right.
Because isn't really that's what the people pleasing is you want people to love you.
Yeah.
And so within that, I think my biggest thing, as you're sharing, the stuff that you've gone through, especially in the church world, is I have a massive problem with over-talking and oversharing with people pleasing. So if I just can give you enough details, and in the middle of all those details, self-deprecate. It's a massive problem I had. So if I can tell you all the flaws that I had, you will because you'll go, oh, she knows. Okay, she knows what she has to. I like her because she's real.
It's like setting up the rejection moment up
front.
Let me tell you all the things wrong with me.
Yes.
So you can see it now.
Yes.
Versus getting to know me and you find out later.
Yeah, so then if someone was like turned off by it, then I would beat myself up. Okay, you didn't say the right things to them, so you didn't make them like you.
Yeah.
So it was a nonstop vicious cycle.
It's like people pleasing has such self-rejection infused in it.
Yeah.
Because it's like you're divided against yourself, and it's pushing you to go be needy in a relationship, but then it turns on you on the outside of like stupid. You say like it just keeps that cycle going.
Right. So I think too, and a lot of our OCD audience can probably relate to this. When my words and things didn't land right, I resorted to, well, if I can present well, my house is immaculate, and I got accolades for having OCD. I've shared this in the past of where I would go on job interviews and they would ask me, what's a good trait? And I would say, well, I have OCD. I keep clean. I like how I do my work, how I this, how I that. Oh, okay, you're neat. You're that. Like, I got praised for having obsessive tendencies. Oh, your house is so nice and clean, and
No one was like, okay, so are you getting some help in working through some of these areas? Because
I got praised
we go, oh, keep it going, because it keeps the
Right.
machine of business going, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So then, anxiety about all that stuff. But, because I think it's interesting, too, on the nuances of what people-pleasing can do in your life, of how you were raised and what it looked like. And, like for you with good grades, I never had good grades. I never, that was not a thing for me to perform in that way. But I would do it in other ways with people to, over-talk to the point of insanity, make myself feel so yucky just to get that look from someone's face of any slight thing that I could see in their eyes that they could connect to me was it was like a drug.
Yeah. It can go into anything.
Yeah.
It can go into anything you do. You just want people to acknowledge
affirm you.
Yeah. So what are you realizing, when you look back at your childhood, what what was the thing though growing up that did get any kind of attention? You know, we talk about like emotional neglect and in upbringing. Do you have a memory of something where you're like, oh, when I did that, it got a moment of attention? Was it cleaning up something? Was it
Only if I looked pretty.
when you looked pretty?
When I looked pretty. Oh, you look nice today.
Which is normal.
Like, only.
Which is normal. But when it's only that,
Right.
so it's like I've got to look.
Especially my father's side of the family had very big value on what you looked like.
So that
Yes.
is I've got to look good in order to be loved.
Yep.
That's
100%.
That's torturous.
Absolute torture. And when we had a couple different dynamics in the house. So then when I'm becoming teenager years, my mother didn't live with us. She had gone out on her own. So my father was the main influence in those teen years of those things. I would say too, growing up, we were just like tended to as far as, you know, go get your bath. You know, our needs were met, but there was my brain cannot attach to anything that gave any praise.
Yeah.
I honestly, I have none of that. My imprint of that is as I moved into teen years, you look good. You look nice. Oh, you're looking at me. Okay, so that's how I gotta look good.
Right. So how'd you recognize that and go, all right, this is something I need to start healing through?
Oh gosh. That's been a really, really long journey for me, because in just sharing what I shared too, obviously that doesn't work with women, right? So it works with men, and so a lot of my over talking and things like that would happen with women and trying to make women friends, right? Both of those things were very, very difficult for me. And a lot of it came down to understanding just an absolute hatred that I had for myself. I had an absolute disdain for myself, and I had to really come to terms with that.
Right.
How that even started, all of those things, which, you know, wasn't so much of the God loves me and I love myself book, which I think everybody needs to constantly, like, foundationally revisit that, because it's so hugely important, that I'm okay with right where I am, that I'm enough in whatever state I'm in. And I have to constantly remind myself of that.
You bring out an interesting factor in the people pleasing, that we can tend to have a certain route that goes with men and a certain route that goes with women.
Right.
I see that in my history, that like there was certain disapproval that I'd feel from like certain ladies in the church.
Right.
You know, especially like older, you know, like if you felt that, I remember I'm laughing because I remember as a youth pastor, our youth group was growing. And I remember like, you know, it was in the 90s, so Christian music was actually starting to be good. And I had a couple parents that were they couldn't stand that I was utilizing that music.
Isn't that so funny?
How are you playing this worldly music? And, you know, and I'm like, well, it's a Christian group, and I'm trying to field parents, but I'm like,
right.
This music's great and it's encouraging their faith, and I'm, you know, but you're just feeling the disapproval,
Yeah.
you know? And I feel like in church setting, there's certain ways I can see where I would try to modify my behavior towards females,
Right.
and then modify
Right.
with men, because with men, it's like the performance of what you've achieved,
Right.
you know, and it could be anything from equipment you're using. Hey, I got the X4300, and
Right.
like, oh yeah, where'd you
Right.
get that? You know, like sometimes men, you know, we could go look at the grass, you know, and
Right.
and go, hey, look what I
right.
did in
That's
the grass.
very true.
Look what I
right.
did in the grass.
Right.
You know,
Right. And then a man could say to you, well, why didn't you use this kind of... Oh my gosh, okay, why didn't I? Right.
Right.
Why didn't I use that seed? Why didn't I do that? Right.
Yeah, why don't you just use the
Right.
423-8 fertilizer over there? I was like,
Right.
I don't know. I'm just,
Right.
I just, you know.
Right.
So to me, it's the biggest help is being kind to myself. That
Yeah.
like, it's okay that they feel that way. I accept that, and I don't have to sit here and chase what they're saying to fix it, because that's going to lead nowhere.
Yeah, because it's horrible and it's yucky. And that's where the majority of, even if I have spinny moments now, I'm chasing that. Okay, what if I should have said this? I should have shut up. I should have, and it's really people pleasing. It's all rejection.
Yep. Oh, OCD.
My brain was not wired to go, you are dearly loved as my child. I didn't know that concept, really, honestly, until you and I got together. I did not. Even in all my years of being saved, it was out of, a lot of it was just desperation of like, yes, I needed a savior and all that, but is like then in turn, I never felt good enough for even God to, even though I accepted his love, it was like, no, I still have to earn it.
Yeah.
I'm still not good enough. I still have to earn it, which is what I was doing with absolutely everybody around me. Like the concept of like, no, you're loved exactly where you are and the state that you're in. Like I could go hysterical right now.
Yeah,
like,
me too.
The tears are right here.
Me too. I feel that.
We talk about this constantly in our home. You and I have been the biggest cheerleaders for each other in this. And it's been a journey of healing our hearts and recognizing like how all this stuff has worked. And I think it's important for you to look at that too and go, okay. That's why, share our materials and because I feel like too there's a loving place that you explain things of like not beating up your parents, but going, okay, you know what?
Yeah.
They didn't have it to give. They didn't equip. Recognizing where you weren't equipped. Helping people have giving yourself language to even talk about why you are where you're at. And helping yourself, because beating yourself up is not helping yourself. I did it for years, trust me. The invisible bat that I was beating myself with, it didn't help. It just made things worse.
Right. And it just carries out the neglect and abuse that,
right.
that took place. It just continues it when we beat
just
ourselves
transfers
up.
it over. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
This is really good.
Right. So
really good what you're sharing.
I want to give people too, because you brought out some really great things in your video on, being kind to yourself, recognizing like, what is love? What do I even think love is supposed to look like? Mm-hmm. How do I love myself? Like, what would be something that, people can refer to those videos and we'll link those, that we could just share about even your journey of like, understanding those things.
Well, a lot of people in the audience too, they relate to obsessive compulsive kind of struggles. And in my opinion, OCD is a spectrum.
It is.
That's just my opinion. I'm not talking as like a clinician, whatever. That's just my opinion. Because I could see somebody, they would not be diagnosed OCD, but they have patterns of obsessive and compulsive tendencies.
Right.
And as Christians, we can be very prone to that. I feel this disturbance. I got to pray. I got to do this thing. I got to, we can get lost in that. And people pleasing is a big one because we want to be forgiving people. We want to resolve conflict.
Yeah.
We want to be peacemakers, right? There's all this stuff the kingdom of God brings about that we're called to live in, but because of our brokenness, it's all twisted. Every subject's twisted.
Right. I used to say, I just want to feel normal. What can I do to feel normal? If I do all these things, maybe I'll feel normal.
Yeah, and I think the thing that is very helpful is moving to a place of lovingly noticing.
Yeah.
Just lovingly notice where you do things highly driven to please. It doesn't mean it's all evil, right? Like even in marriage, there are times where I recognize I'm doing things to try to please you versus just loving you. There's a difference.
Yeah.
Right? And it doesn't mean, what I did was wrong because it was filled with pleasing. It's often a mixture. Usually you can discern it by going, I'm wanting something back. I'm wanting an attaboy.
Right. Tell me we're okay. Just look at me. We're okay.
Yeah.
People can do,
and some of that, it's normal too. It's this growth journey is not a clear like either this or this. So we compassionately notice where you become like.
Excuse me.
Yeah, sneeze.
Allergies are crazy right now.
You can go like this over your
I did
mic
the silent.
if you had to.
I did the silent sneeze.
rather than whoo-choo in somebody's ears like
Max.
But like lovingly noticing where those like where you're either needy,
right?
You do things and you're trying too hard. You're trying too hard. Like in that conversation you had with that lady, we're probably I'm gonna graciously wrap it up.
Yeah.
You know what? Appreciate it. I think we've done what we can. Right? I think in that scenario, right? It's not like,
if I could go
I'm
back.
done with you. Out of my life. I'm sick of you. We're done. It's more like, I think...
I finally see. This is
I tried what we can. I think we've gone what we can in this. Mm-hmm. So, blessings to you. I'm moving on.
Yep.
Right? To lovingly notice where there's neediness, lovingly notice where you're trying so hard, but you struggle to receive. And in that moment, if you keep trying, it's being unloving to yourself. And I realized, I have to learn how to see the love that's available for me. So you talked about, which we all struggle with, coming to Christ, but you're still battling unworthiness.
Yep.
Right? So there's love there. You're saying yes to it, but to truly take it in and let it apply, unworthiness pushes it back. Because it's like, I'm a hot mess. I'm not pretty enough.
Yep.
I'm not doing things well enough. So we become obsessed with what disqualifies us. So we don't see the beauty in Christ. We don't see the beauty of his love. So I try to keep it simple. And it's unconditional loving acceptance. Right now, you're received. Let the love have its work. And then notice where you compulsively people please. You're going to have to starve that a bit.
Yeah.
And that's where the drug addict withdrawal symptoms come in, because you go, I'm not just going to call, because that call is about me feeling better. It's not about the relationship really healing. I just need to feel better. Or,
which Mark and I try to encourage each other in this, be okay in the awkward silence. You don't have to fill it.
Right. And that's another compulsion, like the compulsion over talk.
Yes, I do that. I don't like this. I still have a hard time. I got to say something, because then they're going to think I'm weird. Maybe they're going to think I go.
Right.
You don't have to say. Right.
This is good. I think we solved people's problems.
Don't you?
I think we solved everybody's problems today, did we?
I think so. So everybody needs to go watch those videos. They're so good, and you lay out great points about freedom and new patterns and learning what love looks like, and they're great. So
absolutely.
Can we link them here?
And do us a favor, like and subscribe. Please if you enjoyed this video. We're using these conversations to be, like you said, kind of reaction videos, and looking at it in an application. What's our journey look like, and kind of processing it out. And I feel like these videos are meant for the people that want to go a little bit deeper. They want to hear some of the nuts and bolts of what it looks like. You can always send in questions, markdejesus.com/questions. But please like and subscribe. You can also go to markdejesus.com, and you can get a free ebook download today by signing up for our mailing list. And you can also use the donate button if you'd like to support this work, an amount of any kind, one time or a regular supporter. As an application, if you want to get to the root system of people pleasing, get exposing the rejection mindset.
Yeah.
If you want to work through a new relationship with yourself, God loves me and I love myself will help you to unwind how you relate to yourself in a more fruitful way. So we recommend those resources, and we look forward to more great insights for your healing and freedom journey. So, Lord willing,
and the creek don't rise.
It's your brother from another mother.
And your sister from another mister.
We got it right. Saying we're out. We'll see you guys.
Thank you, everyone.